Hello there and welcome. I'm Mike Fitzsimmons. Welcome to the debate between the candidates for Spokane Valley City Council position number 2. They are Brandi Peetz, the incumbent, and Michelle Rasmussen, who is making the challenge. And we're going to spend the next half hour talking about the issues in Spokane Valley as they pertain to their constituents. And we're happy that you are with us. So just a little bit of the rules. We had a coin toss just before we went on the air to determine who delivers the opening statement, and that was won by Michelle Rasmussen, and she has deferred, which means that we'll hear first from Brandi Peetz, and the opening statement will be 90 seconds in length. The questions will allow a response of 90 seconds from the immediate respondent, a follow-up of 60 seconds from the opponent, and then, if you desire, a follow-up from the original respondent, and you can certainly pass on that and we'll move on. At that point, we move on to something else. We could be developing issues associated with the first question or second question, as the case may be, but we'll move on. We're going to try to get as much information in this period as we possibly can. The candidates will be addressing questions on a rotating basis, and at the end of the debate, the coin toss having been won by Ms. Rasmussen, there will be Brandi Peetz's opportunity to give the first comments in closing remarks, and then Michelle, you'll have the second. Okay, so if those are understood, let's begin our opening comments. And Brandi, she deferred for you, so go ahead.
Of course. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. It has been an honor to be able to be a councilwoman for the past 2 years. So my name is Brandi Peetz, and I'm running for re-election for Spokane Valley City Council. I have been a Spokane Valley resident for the last 28 years. My husband and I have owned a home in the city for the last 13 years. We also live with our 2 children, of which we refer to as fur babies. So that's been fun. And so I attended Spokane Community College. And while I attended there, I was introduced to student government, where I was elected vice president. And while there, I was able to collaborate with our state legislators over in Olympia. And I also had the opportunity to testify to make sure that our student activity fees didn't increase as well. After that, I earned my bachelor's degree from Gonzaga University. I obtained my criminal justice sociology degree so I could get into the Spokane County criminal justice system, where I was very successful. It was there I participated on a lot of boards, 2 of which the Power Coalition Board through the Greater Spokane Substance Abuse Council, and then I also participated on the Spokane County Citizens Advisory Board through the Sheriff's Office. And so I also had the opportunity to facilitate court-ordered programs through these criminal justice systems and other jurisdictions for people who had substance abuse issues and offenses. And so that was something that I got to participate in and got a lot of experience with. I also was able to be part of a multi-million-dollar budget, so I know how important that is.
All right. Michelle Rasmussen.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My experience actually began, as far as the city is concerned, back in 2008. I actually worked for the city from 2008 till 2015. I was the assistant to the then deputy city manager, who became the city manager. At that point in time, a lot of my responsibilities, with an absence of a deputy city manager, I ended up taking on 4 departments' budgets initially. And then once the Human Resource Department got up and going, then he took over that budget. But I was responsible for the 3 others and not only developing them, but managing them and keeping them lean. One of the other tasks that was given to me was to be able to take the very draft business plan that they had prepared from 2003 to 2008, and I was given the task to try to make it a document that the city could use. And so what I did was I took a look at the document from previous work of in the private realm, being a director for a private company. I did the same thing there, so I just applied the same principles. But I took the language out of it that was what I call city-ese, where people could not understand what it was trying to say. And then I created a document that actually was a very easy read, so that it was a planning document that goes 6 years out for the staff to be able to bring to council, so council could give direction back for the budget purpose, and they still use it today, which I'm pretty proud of. Then when I left the city in 15, I went out. I'm a senior director at Eastern Washington University. I'm in control of 2 different departments. One of them is considered what they call a self-support, so it's run like a private business. We take no money from the state. And at the end of that, I've been a planning commissioner for the last 3 years, and I was a chairman in 2018.
So the first question goes to you, and let me ask you, why, in an era where the public has a great deal of mistrust of politicians and of politics and of political procedures and such, why are you in this? Why did you decide to run?
You know, that's a really good question, but I really got an opportunity to understand from not only a citizen's perspective, but from a staff perspective dealing with citizens on a daily basis for 7 years. One of the things that I found that was absent in the city was a way for citizens to be able to interact with the staff and with the council. And so we created, I worked with IT, and we created a customer service online request program so that we could interact with the citizens. And in that process of being able to, I took, during the 2008-2009 snowstorm, I took over 779 phone calls from the citizens. And I realized at that point in time we kind of had a communication gap, and I returned every single one of those calls talking with them. But it gave me the opportunity to really realize the importance of communication. Yes, did we fall short in some of the things that we had done, but I found that in talking with the people, they were okay. They were all right. Once they had the communication line open and being able to explain what we were doing and where we were going with our services, it was just a real good understanding of how important it is to have that communication back and forth. And that was really kind of the impetus of why I decided to get onto this side, was to continue that communication process with the citizens.
All right. Brandi, you were elected in 2017, so you made that decision a few years ago. Why do you still want to do this in light of the fact that there's a lot of mistrust of politicians these days?
Of course. And so one thing that I always like to tell people is, ever since I was young, I was told by my family, if you want to have an opinion or if you want to have input in a matter, you need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And so I watched the city incorporate. I was in high school, and I started going to council meetings, and I started to educate myself because I really wanted to know exactly what was going on in our city, and I didn't like the direction that they were going. So there was an open seat, and I decided to apply for that, and here we are. And so, you know, with all of the things that are going on, not just locally, but, you know, in the state and federally and everywhere else, there is a lot of mistrust. And so I want to be the person that can come forward and say, hey, I don't care where you come from. It doesn't matter what side, left, right, black, white, doesn't matter. I want to sit down with you, and I want to come up with a solution, because ultimately we get into this position because we want our city to be a better place. I want to be able to be the voice for people who feel like they're not heard. And so it's very important for people to make sure that they have somebody that they can trust, and I want to be that person.
You have 30 seconds for a follow-up if you'd like.
Oh.
All right, then we'll move on to the next question. Let's talk about public safety for a while. Brandi, you want to bring a law enforcement academy to Eastern Washington, and because of the obvious problem of getting recruits for the Spokane Sheriff's Department, which is contracted to provide police services to Spokane Valley. But that wouldn't be underwritten by the citizens of Spokane Valley, would it? That would be underwritten by citizens of the county if they wanted to do this. Why aren't you raising that issue with the county rather than in a city municipal election?
Well, one of the things that I want to point out is most people assume that we don't have enough applicants to be able to fill those positions, and that's not necessarily true. What's happening is that people who are in public safety have a wait period where they can go over to the west side to be able to be trained. We want to keep their costs down. We want to make sure that we're being good stewards of our tax money. And so instead of going over to the west side, people can come here, have a class, and then get out and get on the ground running. We have to be able to support our police, and I think we've done a really great job, especially since we've been able to work with our lobbyists and our legislators to be able to do that. It's not necessarily a Spokane Valley issue. This is a national issue. But for us to be able to get this taken care of so people can be out there, and so we implemented what's called a power shift. And so basically what that means is we have enough police officers out in the streets when crime is more prevalent. That's something that we did as a council and something I'm very proud of. And really, our public safety is, without that, we can't do anything else. So we need to make that a priority.
All right. And your
Well-
response to that, Michelle?
Well, I'd like to at least address the power shift issue. We have had, since I started even in 2008, we've had a continual problem having a police shortage of staffing. It's, the times have changed. We're concerning why it's been short. Initially, the city took the stance when it was incorporated that it was up to the sheriff to fill those positions and didn't participate in that process. As time went on in 2011 and 12, the city took a more collaborative approach and then said we need to share in some of those expenses to onboard these officers. The problem is that in the conversations I've had with the city recently is that even though they've hired 11 new ones, the level of training that they are at may not fit the needs that we have, so they may not even be able to fill the vacant positions we have, which is currently 13. So in the power shift, even though it was created in 2016 and it was actually discussed in 2015 before I left the city, with good intentions, it's a good plan because of the crime that does happen at different times. They've never been able to fully implement that plan because of the shortage of officers.
Okay, you have a 30-second follow-up if
Yes.
you'd like.
I actually just spoke with our county sheriff several days ago, and we do have a lot of retirements coming up. And so as far as I'm concerned, getting the information from him, he said we are fully staffed. We do need to make sure that we do have enough officers in the wait to be able to take care of those retirements. But as of right now, we are fully staffed. We are implementing the power shift, and it's been very successful.
All right. And this question then would be to you, and that is a question having to do with homelessness. Both of you agree that homelessness is becoming a public safety issue in Spokane Valley. It is a major public safety issue in many cities across America, and it is expected, according to all of the projections, to get worse before it ever gets better. So there's going to be an influx of homelessness in Spokane Valley, and the question would be, Michelle Rasmussen, what would you do to deal with that?
Initially, of course, there's the first issue, which is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision that came out of Boise. And hopefully the Supreme Court will pick that up and look at it, because it basically states that if we do not have beds for people to go to, that our police cannot remove them from public places, streets, parks, things like that. So that needs to be looked at. Second issue is this, in talking with Union Gospel Mission and talking with the House of Charities. 2 nights ago, they had 25 beds at Union Gospel Mission, and at the women's shelter had about 10 to 12. House of Charities had 20 beds available. So it isn't always that we don't have the beds. It's the fact that people who would go into them may not want to go into them because various reasons, but typically it's an addiction issue. So some of the things that we need to be able to address, and again, it falls back onto the public safety side, we need to be able to, once we get the Ninth Circuit turned around, that the police officers, as our first responders, would be able to take a look at the problem, be able to have what I would hope for is a triage at the precinct to be able to take these people who are needing help, and in their response, especially now that we're getting a mental health person as well, to be able to analyze and determine what kind of help do they need immediately. Is it a mental health facility they need to be taken to immediately? Is it drug and alcohol rehabilitation immediately? Those are the resources that we need to put together. This is a community-wide issue, and to be able, the city can definitely be there to help fund some of those things, but we need 2 things in that. A return on investment for our taxpayers' money, because they need to be able to see that there's accountability to be built into these programs and not have them as no barrier, but have barriers. And also that first and foremost is be able to bring dignity and the personage back to the person.
Brandi Peetz, your response?
Yes, and I do agree with several of those statements. And first and foremost, people have the misinformation that we do not have a homeless problem. And we see it differently than other jurisdictions do. Our homelessness issue tends to start with the teens. lots of them are couch surfing and don't have the resources that they need. So that's the majority of what Spokane Valley experiences. So it's a little bit different than what you might see downtown or in another jurisdiction. But it's still there, and we still need to take care of it. And especially with the Martin versus Boise Circuit Court decision, even though I do believe that that does need to be looked at, we need to be doing something in the meantime. It may not be a long-term solution, but a short-term solution needs to happen, because our situation is just going to get worse. And so I advocated at City Council to be able to work with our other partners, such as the city and the county. And even though it's not a perfect plan, we need to be doing something. And so I just would like to see us continue those conversations with the city and county and see if we can do a regional approach. I think if we had to do it on our own, we wouldn't be able to afford it. And so working with other partners, establishing those relationships, and knowing homeless don't know the boundaries between the city of Spokane and Spokane Valley. So we just need to make sure that that's a priority and keep moving forward.
You have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, we currently are part of a regional program. We do put in about $3.7 million into a continuum of care program with the Spokane County. And in that plan, that does give us access to beds, gives us access to other things. And I agree with what she is saying as far as continuing that process, but we need to also have even a further stance on that and being able to have a voice at the table to identify specifically the numbers of beds. It just needs to be more of a refined, collaborative approach.
All right. Still on the subject, if we could, on homelessness, and you mentioned the cause of, part of the cause of homelessness, of course, is addiction issues. This question for you, Brandi. The Spokane County Sheriff's Department does have a mental health unit that does work in the county-wide in approaching this sort of issue, particularly with the mental illness component, which is a key part of homelessness. On the other hand, they do not have a mental health unit that is indigenous to Spokane Valley as a city itself. What would you do about that?
Well, I think it's really important to note that the co-response team, and for those who don't know what that is, it's a mental health professional and a law enforcement officer riding together on the streets. And so I think it's important to note that, like she stated before, many of these people who are experiencing homelessness may have other issues. And so if we can get to those root causes first, we don't have to spend $125 in our jail to house them there, because that may not be where they belong. So making sure that we're attacking that problem first, and there's lots of people that we can partner with. Yes, we may not have the department as the city of Spokane does, but we have lots of nonprofits and other organizations that are within arm's reach of us that we can come alongside and come together to help this issue. And I also want to point out, too, that we thought that this was such an important piece of what we as City Council need to do, that instead of sharing that resource that we have with the county, which we've been very grateful for, we decided to take out of our surplus money that we had for this year and fund our own. It's a priority. It's something that we need to continue to keep looking at. And we need to just, as she stated also, I also agree, the dignity piece is huge. Just letting people know that we're going to be there for them, there are resources, and getting them to those resources, because putting them in a jail and costing our taxpayers $125 a day plus is not the solution.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that has taken place in the 5 states that have declared the homelessness a problem, which is New York State, Hawaii, California, Oregon, and Washington. Each one of those states has pretty much depended on a no-barrier approach. And what that's done is it's created additional homelessness, because there has not been the accountability measures put within it. And recently, matter of fact, just today, it was announced that California is now taking a look at a different approach. And it was in the news that they are working through legislation to actually put accountability measures in, and to be able to identify and be able to put people into the proper areas of help that they need. It's taxpayer money. We need to definitely have that accountability, no different than we do in the business plan, to where we have in all of our departments, we have workload indicators and performance measures. There's a reason for that, because it's citizens' money. And we need to be able to identify, is the program working? Is the program not working? Seattle, it wasn't, and I don't want to see that kind of an approach. We need to look at it from a broader perspective that has accountable measures.
You have an additional 30 seconds. Pass on that? All right. We'll continue then. Let's talk a little bit about equity and diversity. Should the city of Spokane Valley, as some have suggested in the community, go beyond state and federal laws to create local ordinances that would be designed to protect minority citizens and foster greater diversity in the community? And that question goes to you.
We currently already have a resolution that states that we will not have discrimination within our city. It's not to be tolerated. As far as additional ordinances and whatnot, we have state laws that we currently follow that don't allow any kind of discrimination or any racism issues. The laws are in place. It's just simply a matter of implementation of those laws. And as the city as an instrument, which I call it an instrument because it's technically a mechanism that provides public safety and infrastructure for its citizens by using the taxpayers' dollars. In that instrument section, it does not really have the ability to manage a social issue, which in essence is what you're describing as a social issue. And it is up to the community, who are the people of that city, to make that determination on whether it is or isn't. It is not up to the city to go into a home and regulate or enforce morality issues. So can they stand behind it? Do the council members as positions need to stand behind that? Absolutely. But as far as a city as an instrument, no. It's up to the citizens of the city to be able to do so.
Brandi?
Yes, and she's right. We do have an ordinance that states that we will not tolerate any racial bias or any prejudice in our city, and I was very happy to sign on to that. However, it's very naive to think that a city of our size doesn't still experience these issues. Not to mention, we've had numerous students and families come to city council meetings and state that they're still receiving some of these prejudicial biases. And I think as a city, we need to reiterate that we do not tolerate this kind of behavior. Do we need to have another ordinance or something of that kind? I don't think so. However, if somebody's coming forward and saying that there's an issue, I think for us as city council, being that we are the voice of the people, that it's important for us to listen and validate those concerns. Just because we aren't experiencing those things does not mean they're not happening in our city. So if we have to take a few extra steps to overlook some of our ordinances and make sure that we're not contributing to the problem, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. And it doesn't mean that we're not enforcing these things or that we don't believe that as a city. It just means that we're willing to listen to our citizens and validate their concerns.
Follow up if you'd like.
I believe in validating concerns. However, I take it back to the city being an instrument again. And I say that because in our business practices, we do not discriminate in our business licensing, in our permitting processes, or in our hiring processes, or in our planning processes. None of that is discriminative at all. If it is, there are obviously measures within the state level that would address it. As far as the issue about people being validated, again, I get back to the social issue. And from a one-on-one as a person, I completely validate that. But as a city council or as a city council members together, there isn't anything other than what we are currently doing that would benefit that.
This question to you, Brandi, and to both of you, of course. Economic development. Let's talk about economic development a little bit. What's the best course for the city of Spokane Valley to follow in making sure that they attract new business and maintain existing businesses and jobs, despite the fact that there will be future influx or future fluctuations, I should say, in the broader economy? Right now, things are pretty good. You have a surplus, things are looking pretty good. But you know and I know that life is like a bicycle wheel. When you're up, there's only one way to go, which is down, right?
Absolutely.
So what would you do to make sure that protection and economic growth will continue?
Well, I think the city of Spokane Valley is already moving in that direction. I think we've done an amazing job. We actually just implemented what's called a planned action ordinance. That gives businesses predictability and also cost savings. We've done many commercials to bring other businesses and families into our city. Not many cities can say that they have a river that runs through it, so we also take advantage of that. We have 55 acres of undeveloped land over in our industrial area, over in the northeast industrial area, over by Barker. And I think it's really amazing that places such as Katerra, the Coles Publishing Company, as well as Progress Rail and some other businesses that are in the wait for those. I think it's amazing that we have those successes, as well as we have taken an approach to make sure that that infrastructure is in place so we can bring those businesses here to Spokane Valley. We have a great community, we have great parks, we take care of our roads, we do a really great job. And so just making sure that we're highlighting our successes and letting people know that we're here to stay and that the city of Spokane Valley is a great place to live is a good start. And I want to continue moving in that direction.
Michelle?
One of the things for economic development, which is really important, is being able to keep the infrastructure intact. It's huge for being able to move services, goods, people, for employment and whatnot. And one of the things we need to make sure that we do, as well as deregulation as much as possible, to be able to make it as easy as it is for businesses to come and to get started immediately, to look through the comprehensive plan and find out if there's zoning that we need to change, those kinds of things, which I currently am on that commission to do so, and have done a lot of deregulation recommendations to council this last year. But infrastructure is huge. It's a big one, and bridging the valley, continuing it, but also our pavement preservation plan for the residential zones, and being able to make sure that they have good roads to drive on, and we need to find a resource to be able to continue that pavement preservation.
You have 30 seconds.
Yes, and so we have streamlined our permitting process, which is one of the big things that I think people see in Spokane Valley. And also, too, it determines that they don't have to go through extra SEPA processes and things of that sort. And so we really are bringing people into our community because we're doing the right things. We're showing that we are moving in the right direction. And as far as pavement preservation is concerned, we take advantage of the fact that we are in a great place economically, and so we are fiscally conservative with our budget, which is why we've been able to set aside $12 million to be able to fund Bridging the Valley. We've fully funded Barker, we are taking care of our parks, and we set aside $1.3 million for our 101 fund to do our pavement preservation and maintenance.
Good economic conditions bring about their own weather. And one of the issues obviously facing the city of Spokane Valley is the construction and maintenance of streets, as you alluded to, but also finding a balance between single-family homes and other types of housing in the city. This question to you, Michelle, what would you do to make sure that that balance is under some type of an ordered control, such that that it not only meets the needs of the citizens and the new people who come to Spokane Valley to live and work, but also creates an orderly and reasonable infrastructure as far as roads are concerned, as well as law enforcement and public safety activities?
One of the things we need to make sure that we're continuing to do is to look at that comprehensive plan. And one of the things that we did send forward to council, and it was a 4-3 vote, but we did recommend that on the high transportation corridors, corridor mixed use zones, that we remove the regulation of 210 square feet of open space. In those high corridor zones, you have the highest speeds. You've got public transit that's going by quickly. It's not a place in a retail below, apartment complex above, that you'd want to have a swimming pool or a playground for your child to be playing in. And what that did is it allowed additional multifamily housing to be developed along that high corridor, which the next generation wants. It's foreign to me, but it's something that they do want to have. They want to be able to go downstairs to their coffee shop or to their local grocery store, whatever, and then go back upstairs to their apartment. And by removing that regulation, it would encourage developers to be able to expand and develop even easier along that corridor. And those are the things we need to look at so that we're putting it into the higher areas and keeping it out of the residential zones. So it is definitely a planning, looking at the regulations and the zoning to be able to enforce the growth in the places that it needs to be.
Randy?
Yes, and so being a homeowner for the past 13 years in Spokane Valley, I understand how important it is to have home ownership and making sure that everybody else has the same opportunity. And so one of the things we did as a council and that I was happy to support was the Condo Liability Act, and making sure that developers can come into Spokane Valley and have different types of housing available, whether that be multifamily, duplexes, condos, townhomes, whatever that may be, and just making sure that it's obtainable for anybody. And so one of the things that I really find important, especially in our city, people come to Spokane Valley, We have bigger lots. We have a great community atmosphere. And so people really want to keep their neighborhood integrity. And so putting some of those buildings in neighborhoods that they don't belong in, we can be a little bit more responsible. It doesn't mean that we are against growth, because it's inevitable. We have to embrace that, and it's great for our city. But we need to make sure that we are putting them in responsible places. And this year, we had duplex permits double than that of the city. And so I don't know if that's something, when we were going over our comprehensive plan, we had unintended consequences, but we just need to make sure that we're responsible and continue moving forward and make sure anybody has the opportunity to obtain a home.
Half hour goes by quickly, my friends, and it's time for closing remarks. And you deferred at the front end, so Michelle Rasmussen, you go first.
Well, one of the things I've been really blessed with is being a big planning picture person. I've actually had a lot of experience in that in my lifetime, 38, 40 years worth of work. And at the city, what that meant was, as I had mentioned before, the customer service online response program. One of the other plans that the city did not have was the continuity of operations plan in case of a state of emergency. That I developed it and presented it to council, and they did pass that one. And then, of course, the plan for the 6-year business plan, and being able to do that and manage that plan. The one plan that has yet, and of course being a planning commissioner as well, but the one plan that we have not yet touched and we need to touch is that pavement preservation plan. I'm a big picture person, and I like to be able to have an understanding of what we can do in order to keep that infrastructure in place, be able to talk to the citizens, let them give feedback on what kinds of roads they want to drive on and what they will pay for them. And then that's the reason I'm running, and being able to continue my planning abilities and to offer that to the citizens.
And closing remarks from you.
Yes, of course. And so one of the things that I think is really important is experience. And I bring a lot of experience to the table. I have a very diverse skill set. Being that 60% of our budget is public safety, I think it's very important to have someone who not only has experience as a citizen, as a city employee, but also as a council member to be able to move us forward in the right direction. And also, too, I have the budget experience. I've been through numerous budget processes, not only at the college when I was there and in charge of a multi-million-dollar budget, but now as a city as well. And we've done a great job. I've been a part of that. And this has been a historical year for the city of Spokane Valley. We are in such a great place this year, and I'm really proud to be able to say I've been able to be a part of that process. And so I just would expect people to know that I have done a great job, and I really want to continue moving forward. And also to, I want to sit down with people, I want to talk to people, and I get out into the community. I do coffee chats, and it's all about education for me. The more that I can get out into the community, educate myself and others, the better of a community we have and the better voters that we have too. So I would just ask for your vote, and I appreciate being on the council for the last 2 years, and thank you so much for having me.
Ladies, we thank you both for your participation today. It is position number 2, Spokane Valley City Council. I'm Mike Fitzsimmons, and thank you for watching.